Hey y'all, Al here. This is episode 3 of How to PoE, the Labyrinth. Now when you looked up your first guide, you probably noticed the choice of an ascendancy that was made in the build, on top of the base character. You might be wondering how you get those, so we'll be covering that in this video. Now at every difficulty, you'll encounter 6 trials that you need to complete to gain access to the Labyrinth. For the sake of time, I'll only show you a very quick example of each of these, as running through all of them would take much too long. You only need to do these once per league. What this means is that once you've done your trials and gotten access to the Labyrinth on your first character, all future characters in the same league won't need to repeat the process. But you must repeat it for each difficulty. So on your first character, you do them once in normal, once in cruel, once on merciless, and then once for the maps, and then you're done. You have access to all labyrinths for the rest of that league on every character. So whenever you find a trial, I'll put the location of all 6 trials on the video. Whenever you find a trial, there is this door, this trial of ascendancy. You open it, and then each trial has a different style. So the first trial is in Act 1, Lower Prison. This has spike traps, as you can see. These spikes deal damage according to your max health, and they cause a bleed. Now, you see, I'm bleeding. So to remove that, you have to use a class such as this, of Staunch. So that is how you remove the bleed. The second trial is in the Chamber of Sins, level 2. Now what these are saw blades, and how they work is they deal damage to your life as you are being touched by them. So as you see, it comes in contact, deals damage, and then goes away. So what you want to avoid doing is walking with them. You want to walk against them. The third trial is located in the Crypt, level 1, in Act 2 as well. These are very much similar to saw blades, except they are much larger, and they are often accompanied by switches, which change their behavior, as you can see. So you have to be careful with the switches. Sometimes they help you, sometimes they're against you, and generally you follow the same tactic of trying to just avoid them, don't walk with them, and if you have to pass through them, go as they're going against you. The next trial is located in Act 3, inside the crematorium. Now this floor tile is non-damaging as long as it is gray, but as soon as it turns red, as you see, it will start dealing damage and I will start losing life very fast. Now, the whole point of this trial is you use levers to open the doors, you run from lever to lever, and you generally only walk once it is calm. There are also monsters on the way, which can actually be quite nice to refill classes and as such. Now the next trial is located in the Catacombs in Act 3. I know that in the last video I said that you just could ignore the Catacombs whilst leveling. That's just a personal preference because I like to come back and do the lab later anyway. But if you intend to do the lab whilst leveling, then yes, you should pass by this zone. As you can see, this one has what we call the flying Roombas, and they function very much like the other 2 types of traps. As long as you are with them, they deal damage to you. Finally, the last trial is located in the Hedge Maze in Act 3, and this one has Poison Darts. Poison Darts deal damage on impact and poison you, dealing chaos damage over time, as well as slowing you, as you can see as soon as I get hit. See? So it's important to note that all traps deal percent-based damage, calculated off of both your energy shield and your life. Therefore, going back with a higher character to complete the labyrinth, whilst making the mobs and the boss fight much easier, won't protect you from dying to traps. So I placed the following image to list all the locations in a link in the description, so you can just refer to that when looking for the trials. This is a reminder of where they are. So, the labyrinth, when to do it. One thing you should know about the lab is, it's hard. Not just are the traps deadly, but Izaro, the boss, hits like a truck. Therefore, I don't recommend doing it as soon as you have access. The lab levels are 33, 55, and 68, respectively, for normal, cruel, and merciless. So, unless you absolutely require your ascendancy points for your build to be functional, I would just do them later. So, like your normal lab, I would do it well into cruel, when you're already way over leveled. Go back and do it later. It's not a rush. Gates levels, make sure you're higher than 33, 55, or 68, and that way you'll clear it much more easily. You won't have to worry about the fight as much. especially if you're in hardcore. Izaro can be really surprising with his damage output. Even 20 levels under, he still hits me really hard. So you don't want to lose your character out of just sheer impatience. So, as you're about to enter the lab, I'm going to give you a short list of tips and tricks, just general knowledge you should have about the lab. That'll make it run easier. So let's go ahead and enter. So first off, as you enter the map, there's always a current location whenever you enter a new room. This device always shows you the current room you're in, so for example, silver key, and the amount of connections that there are after this. So right now there is one connection leading south. Always check it whenever you enter a zone to make sure you're going the right way. I'll show you the map at the end once it's complete, and you always want to make sure you're going towards the right, as that's where you'll find the next boss phases. Okay, second tip in the lab, the direction, 99.9% of the time, is going to be up and right. I just started this lab and I didn't look up the layout, and I'm just going to go up and right, because after having run a lot of labyrinths, you'll just learn that essentially, most of the time, it's just northeast. Sometimes, in rare occasions, it's not that way, but generally, you always want to be trying to go up and to the right. And then that'll work in like 90% of scenarios. Next up is Argus. Whenever you see this door, this silver door here, and there's a large beast behind it, that is Argus. Don't bother with Argus. Unless you're doing runs to make currency, or just like rushing Uber Lab to try and get keys, Argus is just a risk that is not worth fighting. He's just going to give you an extra treasure key. I'll explain what they do later, but like, the likelihood of you getting good from him, something good from him, is not that high. He is actually scarier than Izaro, the actual boss of the labyrinth, because during his enrage he hits harder and faster, so just ignore him, do yourself a favor. Alright, so next is Izaro's fight. You'll encounter and fight him 3 times, during each doing about 33% of his health. For each of the first 2 phases, Izaro will be accompanied by a number of things, so I'll show you in here what he's accompanied by. They're going to show up in these 3 things. Now, these are charges. This means that he's going to gain charges. When I press them, he is going to lose his charges. Essentially, you want to make sure normally that you don't let him go through with his buffs. The reason you do this is simple. If you let him go through with his buffs, as I show you, I will let him get his buff now. So you see, he gets his charges, and he leaves with them. Now, the next time we will encounter him, he will have all of those charges, and he will be buffed up. So that is why you usually don't let him do it. Now, I let him do it to showcase, but obviously, normally in a safe run, you would use these, so you'd click on them to interact with them, and then they would explode and get rid of his charges. There's a number of these different things. You can find them all on the wiki. There's a bunch of different possibilities, and it's random every day what he has accompanying him. So usually just check it out and be ready for it. Alright, so as you can see before we start, he's got a few of these charges here. He's got 6 because we killed him relatively quickly. But now when we enter, he will already have those charges, and we can't get rid of them. Those are there for good for the rest of the lab. And in this one, you see that he's accompanied by these effigies, which are going to also buff him. So, generally speaking, well, I'm going to leave them so that you can see at the end what he looks like with all of his buffs. But generally speaking, you do not want to leave him with all of his buffs on. So now these 2 activated. This one will also be there because I did not damage it. This is one of the ones you have to damage to get down. And then as we get at the end fight, you'll see that they are all going to be there. Finally, I'd like to make a quick note on traps and sinking. Now, when I speak of sinking, I'm mentioning the fact that essentially when you use a movement skill in this game, the way they work is, see, like, I'm whirling from here to here, but it doesn't update my position the entire way. It takes my position here, and then once I've finished, I go to here. Now this can be used to your advantage, if used well. Let me just get rid of these mobs, and then essentially you will see that, for example, for this trap, I can make sure that my sink causes that I basically skip it even though it technically passes through me. You see? I took no damage, my energy shield didn't get lowered. Now you can use this effectively on a number of traps to essentially protect yourself. However, it can also be used against you. What you have to be careful of is when you are advancing, since you are not sinking as well, the position you are in is therefore at risk. So say I'm following this, and then I go to dash. This is a bit hard to do, but if I go to dash to keep with it, it can actually damage me for longer than I am on it. So you have to be careful with that. With some of the ones that move faster, they can follow you and actually deal a lot of damage to you. So you just have to be careful with those and just use sinking to your advantage, not to your disadvantage. Alright, so now we're going to go into the end boss, and as you can see, he has all 3 of his buffs from the previous fight, as well as the charges still there. This is why I generally really recommend, unless you're a build like mine and you're comfortable with the lab and all that, just don't let him get his buffs. Play it safe, just kill them, get rid of them, and then you'll thank yourself later when the rest of the mechanics are easier. Of course, this is something for, you know, doing the lab for the first time. After that, you can try challenges and whatnot, but I recommend doing that. One more thing as well, when you go into the lab, I recommend that you have 2 things. 1, a flask of staunching, and 2, a flask that is panicked. Now, I have both on the same flask, but I just got lucky. You need staunching to get rid of the bleed of certain traps, or you will die while trying to escape from traps, and I really say you need a panic flask. I would actually go with more life flasks, but my build is one which only uses 1 life flask. But if you have this slot, use an extra one, especially if you're not that comfortable. Right now, I usually don't even need it, but that's because I've run a lot of labs. You want the panicked because you want that when you're at low life, you have that instant recovery backup so you don't accidentally just die to a trap. So that's generally my recommendation. I forgot to film the actual end fight, so this is a different lab because I did it after the reset. As you can see, I left the portals up as well as the fonts that curse me, but I have a curse immune flask of warding, so I will be fine. I'm also going to show you the room of the fight. The last room always changes. As you can see that in this one, there is a pattern of these going around and fonts on the rest of the side. It's usually always a combination of 2 traps. This time it was these 2. Izaro also gains an additional ability, the green circle around him. If you stay within this green circle, I will for the next one, it teleports you away. I'll try not to kill him too fast. Oh, too late, he died. Alright, well, if you do stay inside the circle, essentially what happens is he teleports you far away into one of the corners of the room. So it'll either be in this corner where there are spikes, that corner, or the last one up here. It's almost always a spike one though. So you basically want to try and move out of that and then jump back in. And then when you're done, you come here, last room of the labyrinth, where you have the treasure chest. Now, as you saw, I picked up some extra treasure keys because I left him have his buffs. As I said, I don't recommend leaving his buffs if you're just doing this for your ascendancy, but I was doing this both through the video and just to farm a bit of currency anyway, so I figured I'd leave them on. After that, you come to this font. I'm going to take another item because I already have the enchantment I want on all 3 of my pieces of gear, so I will take a random piece of gear from something, such as this, Alpha's Howl, and then I will enchant it. So, as you see, I just got this 45% reduced storm call duration. Not particularly useful for this build, I mean for this helmet, but hey, you know, you keep on going and eventually you get a good enchantment. And now I have keys, and so I can open. I'll just show you. Basically, it's completely random. These chests can give you absolutely anything from rare items, unique items, to high-quality gems, high-tier maps, Vaal fragments. It can give you just a bunch of stuff. So you just open, like I'll open a random one. I got 20 quality gems, so that's pretty awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Once you're done with your enchantment and you've picked up your loot, you go click here on the Ascendancy tablet. You choose your Ascendancy. I've already chosen mine, so I can't choose from the other 2, but you basically click on one you want, you click Ascend, and the later difficulties you just click on it, and then you get your passive points that you can put in your Ascendancy tree and your passive tree. The enchantments, quick note, you can only enchant boots in normal, then in cruel you can enchant boots and gloves, and in merciless you can enchant all 3 boots, gloves, and helmets. In Uber you can obviously do all 3 as well. Yeah, then you're done. As an extra note, this is of course a video for the lab for when you're trying to get your ascendancy points. So labyrinths for farming have different techniques. You do things differently. You keep the things to get extra keys. You do higher difficulty, but I wouldn't do that, and I'll explain how to do that in a later video, but that's more of an endgame type of thing. Another good thing to know when you want to do the lab that day, there's this great website called POElab.com. People upload the layouts for each difficulty, so you have normal layout, crow layout, merciless, and uber layout. You can simply click on any of them. Let's say like click on the Crow Labyrinth, and then you'll get the layout on your on your screen in large. You can basically see, as I said, I was going to show you the full map. So here's what a completely explored map shows you. You can see that there's some areas you don't need, like for example here, the Silver Key. You don't need to go there. You don't need to go to these areas. Like you can basically just kind of follow through. I'll explain like what some of these symbols mean. These are Izaro's runes. This is when you will fight him. These are silver keys. They're used to open silver doors. Silver doors are optional. They give you extra loot. They're not always worth it. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're really just kind of not worth your time. Look it up though, because sometimes, some days, there are some really good caches, so you never know. But most of the time, they're not worth your time. And then the golden doors, you have to get the golden key for to be able to continue through the labyrinth. And finally, A, where the A is in orange, that is where Argus is on the map. That is not relevant for us right now because this is just a guide as to how to do it like quickly and just for your ascendancy, but at least you know to avoid him in that area, and for later times when you're actually going to be trying to fight Argus, that way you'll be able to find him. And yeah, that's pretty much it. POA Lab is just a great source to get your info. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this third video on the Labyrinth and the Trials, and you have great luck in your future runs. I'm Alastiir. You can find my Twitch in the description, and come check it out and ask me some questions if you feel like it. Or you can leave a suggestion in the comments if there's some content you'd like to see later on in another video, if it's not something I'm already going to cover. I'll see you in Wraeclast.